Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Nixon Peabody's virtual conversation series, Sparking Connections, where we catch up with former and current NP attorneys, take your questions, and highlight the talent, commitment, and inclusivity that define the firm and its people, past and present. My name is Paul Asdowski, and I'm Nixon Peabody's Senior Manager of Alumni Relations and Business Development. Today, I'm excited to be joined by Vice President and General Counsel at Keolis North America and the founder of Street 2 Ivy, Tavares Brewington. Over the next 30 minutes, Tavares will discuss his 5 years at Nixon Peabody from 2005 to 2010, his journey to his new leadership role, and his commitment to giving back to the community as both an attorney and a philanthropist. Welcome, Tavares, and thank you for joining us today.
Hello, thanks everyone for joining. Happy to be here. Looking forward to having the conversation.
Excellent. Well, before we get started, there is a chat feature. If you have questions, feel free to ask them in the chat feature, and we'll work through them as time and schedules permit. So Tavares, it's been a while, probably since many on this call have seen you. Tell us what you've been up to since you left Nixon Peabody about a decade ago.
Well, there is, it's a pretty long story, but when I initially left Nixon Peabody, I went to the Department of Justice, worked in the organized crime unit there, and from there went into, corporate life. I went into United Technologies, worked at Biogen, Danaher Corporation, and now most recently Keolis as their general counsel.
So you've certainly kept busy. And you obviously have made some transitions since you left Nixon Peabody. So when you think back or reflect on the time, the 5 years that you spent at the firm, what are your most vivid memories?
The first and foremost are the people. I worked with a bunch of great people who I consider friends today. Some who I'm working with even now, they're counsel for the corporation. In addition to the people, one thing that I really appreciated about my experience at Nixon Peabody was the training. Really, when I reflect back on my career, the firm really made an effort to train its associates, everything from writing to mock motion hearings, flying us all over the country to the various offices as a class. And then working with partners who had great practices and who were willing to give us an opportunity to learn and get our feet wet. And that really gave me the confidence to be able to practice and take on complex matters, which just that experience was invaluable.
And when we spoke last week, you mentioned when you got to the DOJ, you felt like you were ready for anything that they might throw your way.
Yeah, I felt like that. I remember my first day at the DOJ, they put me in a conference room with FBI agents who were asking for a search warrant. And so that was pretty intimidating right away. And, I learned how to deal with those questions over time. But definitely my experience at Nixon Peabody gave me the confidence to really dig in and learn and then take on a leadership role.
So thinking back those 5 years, how, with the training and everything that you learned at the firm, how did that impact your trajectory and sort of the stops that you made along the way and where you are now?
Yeah, I think one, just, the ability to work on complex cases, right? I think, not everyone has that opportunity. I worked on some pretty big investigations, you start from the bottom, basically, even just doing the document review, going into the interviews, then, progressing into taking depositions and then, earning the confidence of the people you're working with that allow you to get into court. And so those things, really were helpful. And so as my career progressed, just having that experience, I think is what matters, right? Knowing that, all right, I've seen this before. We can always get better at anything we do, but it's not new. And it's just about working hard and perfecting your craft.
Great point. So transitioning to what you're doing now, you joined Keolis during a very uncertain time. You've been there 14 or 15 months. Certainly, in the COVID world, I'm guessing ridership has decreased with the shift to remote work, and that there may be some ongoing hesitancy for people to resume their public transportation routines. What drew you to such a challenging role, especially during this time?
Well, I mean, the transportation industry to me is an important one, and most people don't look at it this way. I look at it as a social and economic justice, issue, right? What we're doing is helping people get to opportunities. And in the United States, what I've learned over time is that our transportation system is antiquated and ripe for innovation. And so that was an exciting opportunity, and that's what we work on every day. Is how do we make sure that the public transportation systems are getting people to where they need to be, bringing people together. So, that's what's exciting about it. It's a real opportunity.
So my next question talked about the enjoyable aspect of your job, and it sounds like you just honed in on it. Is there something that you're specifically working on that is going to sort of meet those goals that are the enjoyable aspect of your job that you're particularly excited about?
Yeah, I mean, I think working with the people, we are people, our people are our product, right? So what we typically do is go into work with a public transportation agency and operate their systems. And so it's our processes that we deploy in those environments. It's also how we train our people and keeping them happy so that when the end user comes into the door on the train, that they're greeted with smiling faces and people who really want to serve. And so that's what we really focus on, and also the businesses, the challenges of the business is we're B2G business. We work a lot with the government. And so it's a highly regulated environment and everything that comes along with that. In the COVID world has made it more difficult because it's a lot of uncertainty around, COVID in general and the impact that it has on your employees. Our employees are face to face with the end user every day. And so making sure that they're protected and that we understand how to best do that is some of our major challenges.
I would imagine we've all had to exercise patience. I would imagine working with the government on such a sensitive area, you've had to have a lot of patience since you started as well, for sure. So transitioning to the NP culture, I think one of the things that we really cherish as a firm is a culture that unites our current attorneys and alums through a commitment to giving back. You're also a graduate of two educational institutions, that embody those same values, the College of the Holy Cross and Boston College. So what impact has this had on you throughout your career?
I would say primarily my experience at Holy Cross was important. Our motto is being men and women for others. That's something that I really believe and I've taken to heart. And fortunately, I've been in environments in my career where the organizations embrace that as well. Nixon being the first. When I was there, we were encouraged to do pro bono work. I worked a lot with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights. I actually won one of their awards for public service. And so that was encouraged. And I think that anything I do, that's where my heart is. I can't be in a job where I'm not in the community. Or if my job is not directly in the community, I'm doing something else in the community because that's just part of my DNA. And so I think that my education, Holy Cross in BC, contributed to that, and also just being around people who care about those things.
So tell us about Street to Ivy and how you came to start at Tavares. This is such a cool organization.
Yeah, so when I was at United Technologies, most people, if you've gone in-house, you know that this happens to you pretty quickly as a lawyer. I was in the meeting and the business people are like, well, you're just a lawyer. You don't know the business. And you don't know business. And so I decided to go to business school. I went to Cornell and got my MBA. And when I was there, participated in the innovation competition. I won it. My team won Cornell's innovation competition. I really enjoyed that process. And so what Street to Ivy is, I wanted to bring, those concepts of innovation back to underserved communities. The concept of design thinking, and right, identifying a problem, rapidly prototyping a solution, getting customer feedback, and then bringing a solution to market. Because I see that's important, not just from a commercial standpoint, but it's important to teach people problem solving, right? If you build an army of people who are able to go through that process, they can solve problems in the community. And Street to Ivy is focused on that. And so what we do is partner with community organizations and corporations to run these innovation programs. And we've been fortunate to work with the governor of Massachusetts, run a program in Boston. We just ran one in commercial real estate. And our newest program, can't say too much about it now, but it's going to deal with a lot of image and likeness, right, for new athletes and the new Supreme Court decision. So teaching people how to manage their brand and monetize it, because I think that's a real opportunity for athletes coming from underserved communities. And so that's a very high level description of what Street to Ivy is meant to do.
And what does the organization mean to you? Obviously, went to business school. Is this an idea that was born of business school, or you got back to Boston and you just said, hey, there's a great opportunity here in the inner city, and what does it mean to you? You obviously have your 9 to 5, 9 to 6 plus job, but this has got to be an area of passion.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the name, right? So I grew up in South Florida, and I always tell this personal story. Neither of my parents graduated from high school, and that's the street. And so I was sitting in the classroom in Ithaca and thinking, how did I get here? And that's the Ivy. And so what we say is from street to Ivy, and it's not necessarily encouraging people to go to an Ivy League school, but we say bringing people from that personal challenge to that personal success, whatever that is. And so the idea for Street to Ivy came actually sitting in the classroom at Cornell. And we, I just started to, put it together. It's gone through a number of iterations, but we still have a ways to go, but I'm happy with where we are now and the progress that we're making.
Anything you're particularly proud of, when you think back, since you've started it and where you are today?
Yeah, a lot of the students that have gone through, like our first cohort of students, they are freshmen now in college, and I continuously get emails, really, they're saying that they enjoyed the experience. It gave them confidence, because that's what we really focus on. There are a couple of main pillars of the program, and no matter what the subject matter is, but we focus on, design thinking, team building. And one of the main goals of the program is to teach people to demystify the process, that they have it within them today, right? You don't have to go to these affluent institutions. You're enough today. Your experiences are valuable. And in fact, businesses need the information that you possess to perfect their product. And so I think, that's what I'm proud of. We're just helping people realize that they have something valuable just by their experience that they can offer the world.
Yeah, it's a great message. Great message. And it sounds like it's reinvigorating, maybe after a long day, to have this outlet. So, that's awesome. So I mentioned one of the partners here in Boston. I mentioned that we were going to chat this afternoon, and they remembered you, and they said, I think he was a football player. So I'd be remiss, Tavares, if I didn't circle back to your playing career. When we were chatting before people joined us, I reminded you, I did a little Googling, and there was an article back in October 1999 about your 4 sacks against the Harvard Crimson. So hopefully you're reminding Harvard grads every once in a while about that game, although I know the outcome wasn't what you wanted. And then after you graduated from Holy Cross, you played over in Europe. What are the lessons you take from your playing days, and those experiences that have guided you throughout your professional journey?
Yeah, Harvard is still a sore subject because we lost that game by 1 point, and we lost last weekend again to Harvard. So that's It's always one of those things. But I learned a lot from football. One, just, accountability. It's one of those things where, it's not just about you as a person, it's about everyone else around you. And, and that was something that's important when you're a lawyer, right? You're usually a part of a team, and people are relying on you to get your part done, because if you don't, there's a gap in the process. And that lesson has been true throughout my career, right? And just really building trust, having people trust that, you're going to deliver when it's time to get something done, that they know that Tavares has completed what he needed to. And I think that's a major lesson. And it's just about those relationships, right? And trust is key to any relationship.
You mentioned at the outset that you keep up with former MP colleagues from time to time. Is it by accident? Is it by design? It's been 10 years now, but is that network still running strong?
Absolutely. I mean, as a general counsel, I have the responsibility of getting the best talent to work on matters that are important to the company. And, obviously we look at all firms that could, help us in the area, but I know the quality of lawyer that I've worked with at Nixon Peabody. And so when it comes down to it, I like to bring in people who I have confidence in, and I know that they can get it done, and that they're going to be diligent, they're going to be creative, and my colleagues from Nixon Peabody, I have faith in them in those ways.
Maybe a little soft spot, Tavares,
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have about 10 minutes here, and I've worked through a number of questions, but want to open it up. If you have a question, please, throw it in the chat box, and we'll pose it to Tavares. And I'm sure we'd love to hear from some familiar faces and names.
Let's see.
Any familiar people here, Tavares?
I see a couple.
If it's okay, we'll just jump in without typing. It might be faster.
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Ronaldo, do you want to go ahead?
I'll jump in, because this guy taught me more than I will ever be able to say about how to lawyer, and most importantly, how to do it with integrity and with compassion and with passion. That, you talk about the sacks on the football team. If someone was playing games with on the other side with Discovery, they were going to get tackled in just the same way. And Tavares had type of tenacity there. But I will say that he did teach me how important it was to understand your client, really get to know their business. So I'm not surprised he went off and got himself an MBA, because he always was able to pick his spots. And I'm also not surprised he's at Keolis, right, when the federal government is finally going to be able to do transportation well. And I'm glad to see that someone who cares so deeply about these type of equity issues is someone who's going to be shaping the future of what transportation looks like, because that's what so many of us have been looking for. So, my big question to you is as you're coming down the road and you see the biggest challenges for folks like Keolis, what are the biggest things that are on your plate? What's keeping you up at night from purposes of understanding where you think you can look forward to the next piece of where your business is? I know we no longer say cents ahead here. We've got other things we say, but we're always looking for, what do you see around the corner or past the next signal, I guess would be on a railroad analogy for what's coming down for Keolis in the future.
Yeah, thanks for the comments and great question. One of our challenges is getting our people to understand the regulatory environment. The transportation industry is very homogeneous in a way, and it's antiquated. And as regulations change and people's perspective on that, private government relationship changes, we have to train them to understand that. And so that's one of the challenges. So the compliance programs are very important. Also, another challenge is just really getting people to understand transportation. Unfortunately, in the United States, most people look at transportation as something that is built for underserved communities, and not necessarily for everyone. and the impact that we can have by changing that perception. One, making things more sustainable, reducing our footprint, but also bringing people together is what I like to say. So you have on a train, the CEO of a company and a person that works in the mailroom riding in to work together. That is what transportation can be. And so I think those are going to be some of our challenges and opportunities going forward.
Tavares, there's a question in the chat box, which I think presents a good follow-on. Is there enough focus on public transit out there right now?
I think it's getting better. I think people are understanding more and more the impact that it has. Like I'll take, for instance, our operations with the commuter rail in Boston. When I worked at Nixon Peabody, I lived in Randolph. Most people, it was hard to take the commuter rail in because you never knew when the train was coming back or if you need to go somewhere in the middle of the day. But something as simple that we've done recently is make sure that the train runs every hour on the hour. And so a little move like that, helps people understand the benefit of transportation, because now you can leave and go to work at any time in the day and know that you're gonna know the train schedule. And so all of those things are, people are becoming aware of it and the opportunity around transportation.
I think if we were in person, you get a lot of hugs and fist bumps right now, because that is certainly, as the weather gets cold, that's a sore spot for a lot of people. So that's great to hear. Danielle, I think you had a question.
Yeah, always great to hear you, Tavares, and good to see so many familiar faces and names. Maybe you could talk a little bit about what it's like to be an in-house counselor and some of the dynamics there that, those of us who've only ever practiced in firms don't experience quite as much, and some of the things that maybe lawyers and firms tend to forget about what it's like to be an in-house counselor.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because the law is important, but it's not as important as relationships and the empathy with the business and understanding the pressure that they're under to deliver in your role. We're often seeing that lawyers in-house as, we're scary individuals when we show up. And because one, we may say no to the business and they really need to get something done for their own personal success and then the overall business success. So really being able to just talk to the team and understand what they're trying to accomplish is really a skill that I think I've seen some lawyers struggle with, because traditionally, we want to eliminate all risk, and that's just not the case. It's how do you mitigate it and how do you make sure that the company can still compete in the marketplace that it's in. When I think about outside counsel, the most valuable outside counsels to me are people who own the work, right? Because most of my day is spent in meetings, talking strategy, and so the nuts and bolts of actually doing the legal work and doing the research and dealing with the various parties, we really rely on outside counsel to do that. And so, some folks don't understand that. We don't have time to answer a question every day. We really just need you to have the confidence to take it and run with it and give us information as to what you think we should do next.
Other questions? So Tavares, before others joined us, we were talking about Nixon Peabody's transition. Our offices just reopened on Monday, yesterday. So some of us are in the office, some of us are slowly transitioning back. Some of us will stay remote. What sort of impact is the work from home environment, from your perspective? What is it going to have on public transportation?
I think it's changing people's perspective of work. One challenge we have in public transportation right now is that it's actually hard to hire people, right? Because when you think about what the job is, the operators, the folks because we run bus, rail all over the country and the world, really, people are reevaluating what it means to have these jobs. And so I think that's going to be a challenge. And I think it's not just for transportation, it's across it's across industries. People are thinking about what does it mean to work? And what is that quid pro quo that I'm willing to engage in for the type of work that I'm being offered. And so I think that we're going to have to be more creative and innovative, and offer employees more, to keep things moving.
Interesting. Time for one more question. Anyone want to ask a final question here, or do we let Tavares go a few minutes early?
I'm going to jump in just because it's so much fun to see so many familiar faces and names, and I'm feeling very old on this call. But one thing I want to ask you, Tavares, is almost the reverse of what Ronaldo asked you, but similar in a lot of ways, is the importance that mentorship has played in your career. You've been in a lot of different situations work-wise, and how have you established mentorship relationships? And now that you're in such a position to be a mentor, as Ronaldo spoke, how important is that, do you think, to professional development of young lawyers?
Well, it's interesting, Melissa, that you would ask that question, because the first investigation I've ever worked on was yours. And so that was really meaningful, and I appreciate the opportunity you gave me there. I think it's really important. When I mentor now, I tell people it's a dangerous thing to sit behind your desk and not really get out there in the world, because it's all about relationships. So I say, the doing good work is baseline. That's just, the price of admission. But really being able to understand your colleagues and build those relationships, that's what matters. Because as we see here today, we've all moved around to different places. But if you have those relationships, those continue, and they create opportunity for you and your career. And so I think it's really important.
Well, I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Tavares, I want to thank you for taking a half hour out of your schedule. It was a pleasure to hear from you, and hopefully a few familiar faces here. If you haven't caught up with them, it presents the opportunity to reconnect. But thank you, everyone, for your time. Be on the lookout for our next Sparking Connection series in Q4 of 2021. Guests to be determined. And have a great afternoon. And thank you again.